Welcome to the Great Break podcast. I am Rena Wells, the podcast you don't want to hear. And I am super excited with the guest that we have today. As you guys know, I am a healer and a mystic, and I have a fellow magical realist, Chrissy Tolley, who is here, who's doing amazing things in our spiritual community. Love her work. You guys need to check her out. She's working as a, like I said, magical realist, as a professional psychic in the Arizona area. She's also created a new reality TV series, which is super exciting because it has to do with The Bachelor. Chrissy will get into that. She's super accurate. She's only one of the other people that I allow read me. I don't go to many psychics, so I'm really excited to have her on my show today. We're going to talk about Chrissy's awakening, how she's moved out of the matrix, her awakening process, how she got into this kind of work, what she's helping to elevate the consciousness on our planet, where she's helping the collective. And yeah, we're going to get into it, talking about all kinds of things psychic and mystical and magical, but also very real and what's happening in our society today as well. So, Chrissy, thank you. Thank you for joining me and for being on my second show. Please tell the listeners what you're all about. This magical realist, what is that all about too? And yeah.
I'm the second person on your show. This makes me feel so important. My ego loves that. I'm like, number two? Oh,
you are number two.
Thank
I would have had to. You beat out my cousin, so well,
Oh my goodness.
My cousin beat you out. I mean, my cousin beat you out. So.
Oh, okay. I was
sorry.
I was like, why? Your cousin's more important than I am. No, but I completely agree with that order. Okay, what is a magical realist? So when I was in like AP Lit, which here in America is advanced placement classes in high school, they're the kind of courses that you can, I don't know if they have them in Canada, but they're kind of courses that you take so that you can get college credit. Okay. And the only AP classes I was ever in had to do with humanities because she can't do science or math for shit. And there was this one teacher who we spent, I don't even know, what felt like 4 fucking months talking about the exact same thing. Looking back now, because I'm also a certified teacher, it probably wasn't that long. But it just really stuck in my brain, which was, magical realism, at least at the time, was a Western literature movement that was, theoretically, that it will, if you read books and shit, they'll be like, oh, this first started in the 1860s or something. Not true at all. It was just when white people decided to start writing about magic. Okay. And now magical realism is very common, and it's something that most of us would describe as fantasy, right? Most people would describe that, that genre in literature today as a lot of fantasy. So magical realism as a literature genre is just the melding of the real with the magical. Okay. So I just loved that phrase after, watching the same PowerPoint in Mr. Perry's class for what felt like 4 fucking months. I just love that phrase. It stuck with me. And it's how I think my work and my approach to the world is best defined. I don't believe that my spiritual self is outside of the realm of what I have to deal with in the tangible earth plane.
I love that.
I think it's bananas that so many, yes, particularly white spiritualists in the toxic wellness space think that they can get out of the reality of the physical. I think it's weird. Right. I think it's scary. Instead, I think I do live here. I do have to deal with money. I do have to deal with my body. I do have to deal with every element of what the earth plane asks of me. And I don't think those things negate my spiritual self or the magic that exists in everyday life.
Well, I absolutely love that you're bringing that up, Chrissy, because everything that you're saying, like when you said you're bridging the fantasy with the reality, right? And that's very much like what the podcast is about too, about breaking out of the matrix and awakening, but still being able to merge all of those concepts together because, yeah, like you said, we are living here. We do live in a society that has been colonized. We are living in really trying times right now. And so I think that's brilliant with them. And thank you for clearing that up because I love how you explained it completely.
I probably explained it wrong, but you're welcome.
No, it's all good. And everything that you're saying, and you brought up, okay, so let's get into it because you brought up the whole aspect of like white culture and the spiritualist movement and everything that you're doing. Like, I think this is where I was really attracted to you and your work because as a person of color, I have had, experience. You understand? I've had in that respect. I've had issues with coming out and doing this because of the amount of trauma to my ancestry line, right? And I know you've had trauma in your ancestry line. We're on the different scales, but I love in how you're talking about merging these aspects together because, first of all, we're all human. We're all dealing with all of this from different perspectives, but we all have pieces of the medicine that are coming together to help each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And so tell me a little bit more about like your awakening to this and being a spiritual a magical realist, I should say, and a professional psychic, and how you are reconciling that in the work that you're doing of bridging that gap. Yeah.
Sure. It's really common. I think this was true for you, Rena, because I've heard you speak
Hmm.
about it. It's really common for people who do the kind of work we do, especially at, yes, the level we do it, which is for money, right? To have
Hmm.
stories about engaging with the spiritual and the magical in their childhoods. And I don't
Hmm.
have any of those. And
Okay.
I don't have any of the stories of like, oh, I saw my grandma standing next to my bed after she passed away. Oh,
Uh-huh.
engaged with this entity, but I didn't know it was. I think I do a little bit, but so much of my I think so much of my repressed sexual abuse trauma is likely entwined with some of that.
I agree with that. Yeah.
That's my suspicion anyway. Or maybe the truth is just I was a traumatized kid who nothing magical was happening to. I have no idea. I was raised Catholic. I'm very Irish American and Catholic. And so I remember being young and sort of being like, oh, why aren't miracles happening to me? Miracles
Interesting.
miracles always seem to be happening to people who then later die in the Bible or saints or what have you. And I'm like, they're not happening to me. I guess I'm not special. And really, what I didn't understand was that they weren't not happening to me because I wasn't special. They weren't happening to me because one, I was living in the real earth plane, and two, I'm a
Hmm.
woman. And
Yo,
the
what? Sorry.
I'm a woman, and the
Oh
only
yeah.
particularly in the idea of Catholic sainthood, if you're a woman and magical things are happening to you, it means you're going to experience enormous suffering and die soon. So
Mm.
I was
Okay.
probably good
So.
that nothing magical was happening to me. But yeah, so I like to say, I was not at all a spiritual prodigy. I was a normal, very sensitive Piscean child. And so um I remember in my head when I was at mass, because we went to mass every Sunday and we had to go to mass every Wednesday at my Catholic school. God, overdoing it.
Oh,
And it
wow.
was
Yeah.
dumb. Um, but I remember writing sermons in my head, and I remember thinking of myself being up there where the priest was saying them to people when I was like
Wow.
10, but there's just not a space for that in
Right.
that community. And I sure as hell didn't want to be a nun. It's like, why the fuck would you want to be a nun? Jeez.
Right.
You know,
Right.
who in their fucking right mind would choose that? So basically, I had kind of a traumatizing, but upper middle class Irish Catholic childhood. Um,
Right.
and when I was and I also went to Catholic school. And when I was about 12, 13, 14 was when we really started getting the messaging around gay people are bad, queerness is bad, gay people are bad, queerness is bad.
Mm.
And I have one has since passed. He's a great uncle of mine, but I had two gay uncles who I was
Okay.
raised around, and they were the nicest men I've ever met. They are some of the kindest men I've ever met. So when they started really
Mhm.
trying to hit that at us when we were a little older, I was like, this is just wrong. This is a lot. I'm like,
Right.
these are some of the only men who haven't abused me. So,
Right. Well,
I'm
that's
like,
so fascinating. Well, I'm just gonna jump in there. It's fascinating that first you're saying they were the only men that didn't abuse you, and that they were gay, and that they showed you the most, support and love and on all of those things. And so there definitely was some kind of break or awakening that happened at a young age for you, even though you may not have had those mystical experiences. It's still quite,
sure, for sure.
yeah.
And I will say I'm lucky enough to have, because my mom comes from a very large family, and also because my parents divorced when I was young, both remarried and are still with the people they remarried. I have a ton of aunts and uncles all of whom I only have good things to say about, but the ones who I tend to think were the funniest and the best were the queer ones. You know? So I guess I should add, a lot of my uncles are delightful and were not abusive, but all of my traditional father figures were. And so I don't know, they're starting to give me this bullshit, and already I'm like, I'm not playing ball. And I remember when I was 14 years old, my mom and I were sitting at a light next to a Catholic church. Weirdly, I'm now realizing it was the church she was married to my father in. And she was like, I think we should go back to, we should really go to mass. We've fallen out of going to mass. We should really go to mass. And I was like, Mom, I'm not a Christian anymore. I just said that to her. And my mom, who's frankly more culturally Catholic than she is truly Catholic, kind of just was like, okay, which I really appreciate. That she did not hit this home too much. And so I kind of, while I continued to be at Catholic school, I wasn't engaging in, the religious element of it. So I swear I'm answering your question. Oh my gosh, she's so Irish Catholic. Okay, cut to.
It's okay. I love your stories. They're great. Go ahead.
Why answer something in 5 minutes that you can answer in 60? Okay. So cut to, I'm 19, 20, 21, and I'm in college starting to remember my repressed childhood and sexual abuse stuff. And I am going, I don't even mean this in a negative way or an ableist way. Clinically, I am going crazy. Like I am going crazy. Like it was bad. Like my poor friends who lived with me in the dorm, I remember there was an entire week where I slept in my closet because I felt like I was being hunted, not psychosis level, but like that, the feeling in my body was that they are for me, I'm being hunted. And I didn't understand that I was just starting to actually integrate stuff my childhood. Okay. So I spend those years, even though I'm really grateful for my college experience, I was not well during the majority of my college experience. I was not mentally well. And so by the time I was about, luckily I get past the bulk of that through, quite frankly, therapy and psych meds, both of which saved my life. And I start being able to integrate that more. And by about 23, 24, I'm then leaning toward literature and cards and things that have to do with angels. Okay, coming full circle.
Interesting.
Leaning toward things that are about angels. So Doreen Virtue decks, Kyle Gray is an angel communicator from Scotland who's very popular. I was reading his books. Like I just started to lean toward angel stuff in ways I couldn't really understand, but it was what I was pulled toward. And I was still, I mentioned it back, maybe 5 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago. How long has she been talking? Oh no. I'm a certified teacher. So when I realized I wanted to be a writer and I quite frankly didn't have the stamina for that at all, or the mental wellness to follow through on that craft. I became a teacher, both because I think I carry the energy of being a teacher 100%. I adore working with kids. I'm very good at it. And so many people in my family are teachers. It's my lineage on both sides really heavily. So I kind of did the thing that I think a lot of people in their early to mid 20s do, which is say, I don't know, this is what everyone else has done. I'm giving up on whatever it is I thought I could be in the end, which isn't to speak negatively about teaching as a profession. It's one of the most sacred callings there is, but I went into it with the wrong energy. So this is how I end up in 2015 living in New Orleans. After I got my master's in education, I did like a year-long program to get my teaching certification. So I'm in New Orleans, which I had only visited once, but decided to move to with my best friend of mine. She's Black. And I am teaching at a public school, and I start to, even though it had been many years since I'd done this, I start to lose my mind again. And there's a few reasons this happened. Some of it was I just probably was in the wrong profession. Some of it was I really carry the energy of like traditional diagnosable workaholism. So I was truly, and this is very common in the first couple of years of teaching, I was working like 60 plus 70-hour weeks.
Wow.
My body does not have the stamina for that. My psych med at the time was starting to wear off because I had been using it for a few years, which I didn't realize. And then this is the kicker and why we're here. I believe that I started to be possessed by a dead person. And New Orleans is one of the most it's one of the most spiritually potent places in the world, and I would argue it's the most spiritually potent place in the United States. So I just, was a white girl who showed up to New Orleans, not ready at all for what was about to spiritually occur to me.
Wow. Okay, so let's just back up. So this is
Yeah, I know.
fascinating that I'm learning all of this about you. Wow, Chrissy, this is exciting. Okay. So, because I've only seen you in the work capacity, and so hearing
Sure,
a
yeah.
little bit.
And this
Yeah.
was all like, it's so wild to think about it because this was all like 7 years ago. And there's some
Okay.
piece of me that still thinks this happened like 2 years ago. No, 7 years ago this happened.
Right. And it's fascinating because it's like, okay, so you first had your little break of like psychosis break or whatever else
Uh-huh.
early,
Yeah.
and then you get
21,
into the
22. Yeah, 2021. Yeah.
right, and then you get deeper into the system. That's how I'm kind of like perceiving it. And then you get deeper into the system, and then something else breaks. And so to the point where your medication was no longer working, is
I
that what?
just, I had been on what I refer to as the psych med carousel in my early
Yeah.
20s.
Right.
And
Yeah.
anytime somebody is trying to do multiple psych meds, which is very common when you're trying to figure out what's
I've done
best.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
anybody who
We've
does
done
this job or could do this, right? So
so true.
finally I had found something that was working. I think it was Wellbutrin. I mean, it's just really basic SSRIs, really basic antidepressants. And I just had been taking it long enough that what I was discovering during that period of my life is that I could really only be on one type of med, or at least one type of med in that dosage, for about 2 years before it just stopped working.
Okay. Okay.
And
So
so
then go ahead. Go ahead.
it just was wearing off. So this could have gone differently if my med wasn't wearing off, but at the same time,
Okay.
it really happened how it was supposed to.
Okay, perfect. So then what happened at that point? Were you having more mystical experiences? Did you question more of the mysticism? Yeah, well, and because
Yeah.
of the
So,
possession thing, I think that's fascinating because I've had something happened similar to me when I was 18. Something tried to possess me through the tarot cards, which woke
yeah.
me the hell up to something more. So I think this is fascinating that, and I think people need to hear that too, that there are things out there when you do open up and or when you're having a break in your most vulnerable point, these things
Mhm.
can come in. So tell me now what now this is getting a little good. So tell me now about what happened when that
Right.
break happened. Yeah.
So we move into my friend, she is still my best friend. She and I visited New Orleans in spring of 2015. We both had this weird, like, I guess we're gonna move there now. I got a job offer there at a public
Okay.
school. The problem was not the school. The school was wonderful. The kids were wonderful.
Mhm.
The problem was me.
Mhm.
So I get a job offer there. We move there. After I left, and I'll explain this in a second, after I left, other people moved into my bedroom in the house we were in, and everybody who moved into that bedroom went insane. So you think
What?
not good. Anyway, so I don't know that that's true. Like, that's obvious. Who knows? Whatever.
That feels true to me, to be
And I
honest.
know
I
it
feel
was.
like
Everybody who lived in
something.
that bedroom lost their mind. So that couldn't have helped. But anyway, to answer your question, by the time I had moved to New Orleans mid 2015, I had already started to read these books about angels connected to the angelic realm. I think, even though I wasn't aware I was doing that, I already had 2 card decks. One I got myself, one my sister had gave me. One was a Doreen Virtue deck, the purple one. One was the original Kyle Gray, like, Archangel deck. And I had
Okay.
already started to use them. What was so interesting is I'm, trying to teach, working really hard, getting really in my ego about how, my best friend who's Black and is clearly supposed to be here in New Orleans having this significant experience is,
Right.
very easily making friends, like killing in a game. And I'm over here being, this dramatic white girl who's pouty and losing her mind, right? Which is very much what was happening. But I kept, interestingly, Rena, I kept pulling cards, and I was starting to hear, I don't want to say I was hearing voices, but I was starting to get very explicit messages from spirit.
Okay.
And what I
Okay.
interpreted as an angelic messages, and I don't think I was wrong. This is
Yeah.
when it starts. Like, this is when it's like, oh, things are talking to me, and when I listen to them, it's probably better. Okay. And then
Mhm.
really simple stuff, the kind of thing where it's like, oh, go turn left, don't turn right, turn left. Like the really basic stuff, like, oh, buy this, don't buy this. Hey, that kid, where's that kid, in my classroom?
Right.
He's fine. He'll be back in 2 minutes. You know what I mean? Like, still, like, those kind of really basic messages. And I understood that it was because I was connecting to the angelic realm. Interestingly, I was just so disheartened, and I'm in the wrong place, and I'm doing the wrong thing, and I know it's bad, and I fucked up my life, and I can't believe this. Why can't I teach? Everybody in my family can teach, blah, 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 blah.
Wow.
aren't working. And I keep pulling the same card, which is the entrepreneurship card. I keep pulling the entrepreneurship card over and over and over again. And it keeps coming up in response to the question, like, why is this happening? What am I doing wrong? Why is this happening? What is wrong with me? Entrepreneurship, entrepreneurship, entrepreneurship. I was like, what entrepreneurship? Like, I am a teacher barely making it through their first technical certified year of education. I'm not an entrepreneur, right? So then it's this same semester. I literally am only living in New Orleans for one semester of teaching. Okay. I fly home to Tucson, Arizona, where I'm from, where I live now, where my family is, for Thanksgiving break. Unfortunately, by about mid-October, I was becoming pretty suicidal, like active beginning stage suicidal ideation. Okay. Wow. So by the time I know it's not good. So by the time I fly home to Thanksgiving, I already, at least theoretically in my own mind, looking back, I'm like, would she have done this? But in my mind, I was doing it, had a plan, had a date. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, here we go. Like, this is the last time, this is likely the last time I'm seeing my family. It might be the second to last, like, like I'm already like, Chrissy's got to write a bunch of letters to people, like I'm already in the planning stages of killing myself. Okay. So I get home and I start to wake up to what's going on. Like, it's true. Like, I realize, kind of back in a vibrational safe space of like being with my mom, like, I'm like, oh, this is bad. Like, I wake up and I bought myself on the head. I'm like, holy shit. So I was able, luckily, through that same, my best friend who was like my best friend who lives in the bedroom next to me, who's like, Chrissy's losing her mind, she needs a therapist. I had gotten a therapist at my friend's, insistence. And I had only worked with her like twice up until that point, but I called her from Tucson and I was like, this is what's going on. And she was like, you need to get yourself into a facility. And I was like, okay, because I knew she was right. So luckily there's this, I credit it with saving my life. There's this place called the Crisis Response Center here in Tucson, Arizona. And it's truly just a psychiatric holding center. And so I went there and I was really only there for like a day and a half. And it's the kind of thing where, luckily they do have social workers there. They do have psychiatrists there. And they just got me on a different med. They literally just put me back on Prozac, which was like half the problem. I was so vibrationally low, both because of where I was and because of this entity, I suspect, that like I really just needed a different med. I really needed like, psychiatric help. And I remember talking to, this was my favorite thing. God, I credit them so much. But I remember talking to the psychiatrist there. And I was like, he was like, what is happening? I was like, I'm a failure. Like, I'm just a failure. He goes, you're not even old enough to be a failure. He's so right. I was 25 at the time. You know what I mean? Like, I had, like what is ultimately a very like lovely life. And I just need to admit to myself that I made the wrong choice so that my parents would love me. Big quotes. Like, you're not even old enough to be a failure. And I'm like, looking back, I'm like, God, that man is so right. And then interestingly, the social worker there, dynamite lady, she was just like, honestly, after listening to me talk, and she was so on it. She was like, I think a lot of what's happening is you're engaging in a ton of self-pity. And she was like, and she was not unkind. She was so kind when she said it. She was like, look around, everybody here, is experiencing legit psychosis and is like, and houselessness. She's like, what are you doing? And I was just like, okay, yeah. It was just these.
Just it kind of hit you a little bit.
I was like, bonk. I was like, okay, like what am I doing? So luckily, so I leave after truly only a day and a half. It was to the point where I was like, I'm at least stable enough where I'm not gonna go do it. And I don't right. So I go back to my mom's house and I just make the choice because I think it was the choice that needed to be made. I was like, I can't keep living in New Orleans. I can't keep doing this. This is dangerous. This is not fair to these kids. And I feel an enormous amount of shame, but I'm quitting my job. And so I did. And luckily, again, the staff at the middle school I taught at were phenomenal. And it just sort of worked out in the sense that it was the middle of the semester. They had a great fit. That person took my role. And the hard part was I ended up, going back to New Orleans one time with my sister to pack up my stuff, say goodbye to my friend, who, and that was it. We drove back from Louisiana to Tucson.
And so that was like that whole Was that what changed you, Chrissy? Is that what
Oh,
totally
we're almost there.
awoke
So
you? Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, okay.
So yeah,
Yeah,
so we come home. I am still, because I kind of just still knew. I was like, if I stay in New Orleans, I'm gonna end up killing myself. Like I just knew. I was like,
right,
I will, and this will become my poor friend's problem. I was like, we're not doing
right,
this. So even though I had a ton of shame and really deep grief around leaving those kids, because I never got to say goodbye to those kids.
right,
And
right.
those kids, and that there's a piece that still haunts me in some ways. Um,
Yeah.
I came home and another friend of mine here in Tucson suggested I work with a shaman named Don Pedro Gonzalez. He's originally from central Mexico, but he had relocated.
I know of him. I've
Yes,
heard
yes,
of him.
yes.
Yeah.
So I had seen him once before, but it was a very different context to see him, 3 weeks after I had moved home, and he takes one look at me in my eyes and he goes, "This is not your sadness." And I said, "Okay." And he did that thing where he looks in my eyes and he goes, "Whoa!" Like where they're like, "Oh no!" And I remember feeling so defeated in that moment because I was like, "I'm a lot better than I was, 3 weeks ago."
Right.
So to have this like fabulously talented man look at me, like, terrifying. This is terrifying. I was like, I actually am a lot better. And he proceeds to do an exorcism on me. Uh,
Really?
yeah, and yeah.
Was it that demon thing? Was it that, or was it you?
I am not sure. I really think what happened is there was an entity. I don't know. I don't know. He just
Yeah,
was like, he figured out that it was a dead person. It could have been God only knows what else or what was connected
right,
to. Who knows? Maybe it was a stronger entity pretending to be a dead person. I don't know. But he got it the
right,
fuck out of me.
right.
And I remember he sat me down before he did this and he said, sometimes I have to tell people things. And I said, okay. And he was like, the other day I was standing in line at the bank and I just wanted to deposit my check, but Spirit told me to go talk to the lady who was withdrawing something at the counter. And I said, okay. He's like, and I didn't want to talk to the lady. I wanted to stay in line and deposit my check. And I said, okay, because I don't know why we're having this conversation. I don't know why this like 70-year-old Mexican shaman is telling me about being at the bank. Okay. And he's like, so I went up to the lady and I told her, tomorrow everything will be okay. And she started weeping because she had just taken out all of her life savings because she intended to kill herself that night.
Oh my God.
He was like, so sometimes I have to do that. And I was like, yeah, okay. He was like, sometimes you'll have to do that. I said, okay. He was like, get on the table. I was like, what is happening?
So he saw that in you. He saw that there's definitely
Total gift catalyst. So this man casually performs an exorcism. And the next day it begins. The next day, Rena. Like literally it went kukunk. Like
so
not
okay, hold on for a second. Okay, so what did he do exactly? Was it like a ceremony, a night thing? Did he pull something out of you? Did you
Yeah,
like
so he literally made me like I was on the table and he was doing the thing he always does and I've seen him do in the past was like all this like
yeah,
chant, like chanting to
okay,
like move big energy out of chakras from what I can tell. I don't know.
okay.
Right? And then he makes me stand up and he literally calls in Archangel Michael and certain other archangels and starts like scream yelling kind of like
Wow.
the angels to like take this thing out of me. And he like
Wow, this is intense.
has his big crystal and he's like waving it like it's a sword and like calling like this. I don't know, is standing as if he is
Wow.
fencing, like calling the thing out of me and then getting these big archangels to get it out.
Wow.
It was wild.
I can kind of feel. Makes me feel like I want to purge. That usually happens when something pure comes into me, and I need to like.
Yeah. So
Yeah, that's intense. Okay, yeah.
it's just like, and this is just like a day-to-day big qualifier because somebody's going to ask. Don Pedro died that year.
Was that the year he crossed over?
Yeah. He worked on me in like late January and he crossed over that October.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'm just so lucky that I mean clearly clearly he was supposed to do this, but like
Yeah.
I'm just very like so I've told this story many times and people are like, oh, where is he? I'm like, that man is dead and he
Yeah.
deserves. He's done enough work.
He's done a lot of work. Wow,
Like, let him
Chrissy.
go. So that's when it begins. That's when it fucking begins. That's when it's like, I do have messages for people in the damn store.
Yeah.
I have, then maybe 3 weeks later, the dead people stuff starts. It's completely,
Mm.
it feels, and it feels cool in the sense that I'm no longer depressed and instead this is happening.
So you're not depressed now. So that was
Oh,
done, but now you're
yeah.
getting the visions and you're getting
Yeah,
the
now
communication.
it's an exchange. I have exchanged being depressed for this experience, which is fine. I'd rather do that, but it was really overwhelming, and I think what was hardest for me is I was starting to kind of scare the people who loved me because they had known, oh, Chrissy quit her job, she had to move home, like Chrissy had
Right.
this like, psychotic break basically. And now the next thing they're hearing is that I have messages for people in the grocery store. Like,
Right.
candidly, they're like not down.
Right.
Not that I'm sharing this with everybody, but like, even my mom, my best friend, certain family members who trust me, like
Right.
they don't know what to do with me.
Right. Well, it's
Uh,
such a drastic shift too, right? And then when you're called to this kind of work, it does make you look, you don't fit the societal norms anymore. And
no.
and you never did really because your soul is, I mean, you've got such an old soul and we've been able to exchange energy and stuff like that. So I know you in that respect, but it's like it's fascinating to hear your story, Chrissy, because I didn't know this part of you, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and so hearing the transition, it's almost like I love that we're doing this because it feels like people in the world are going through that experience
Oh yeah.
that you're going through, that you
I
went
just happen to be
through.
it like, 5 to 7 years earlier than other people.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I think I'm a good example. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't know, but I think I'm a good example of the kind of
no, you
person
are.
who did have like a really big break awakening, who
Yeah,
wasn't necessarily born with that,
yeah.
or if it certainly wasn't active or
I
in.
think you were definitely born with it. I think you were definitely born with it. I think it's what
Yeah.
happens is there's something that happens to us where we pick certain things that we know is gonna wake
Mm,
us the hell up, you
yeah.
know?
So I was not expressing that energy as a young
Right,
person the way that so many people who step into this work do, but I did
right.
get real bonked on the head.
Yeah,
Um,
you really
and
did.
then that happened in winter, early 2016, and a year and a half later, I started my business. It was
Wow.
Yeah, it was fast.
That is fast. That is fast. And so as you moved into your business now, and I wanted to bring this up too, of working because we talk a lot about the colonialism, and I know that's part of like your mission and being a white woman doing this work and stuff like that. Um, do you feel that you still carry some of your ancestry line wounding with doing this kind of work from where you've come from? Yeah, you're laughing.
Of course I do. I mean, I think
Yeah,
I'm 10 times better than I was.
yeah, yeah.
I'm 10 times better than I was when I first started, but
So,
I was just really blessed that there were a number of not white people in my life who had
mm,
already given me this significant gift, even,
mm,
you know, as a younger person, of helping me
right,
grow and heal
right.
toxic whiteness. So
So
I
what?
still say I came into my job a lot more aware than the average
Hmm.
white woman in the job. But that doesn't,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah,
and that was very apparent to everyone who worked with me right away. But,
right.
the fact that I was more aware, I mean, fuck, the bar is low, the bar is in hell, you know? So
Yeah, and well, and this is the thing. What about somebody that doesn't have that? What you were able to have, that you already had, some experience with, um, coming into this and where you're coming from, seeing a shaman, people having friends of color. There are
yeah.
white people that don't engage
Mhm.
in that way, and they're breaking really hard. I know I've
Yeah,
seen some
they're breaking
people. Yeah, I've seen
really, really hard right now, and I
really hard. Yeah,
feel for them. And also, or they're breaking really hard or they're joining cults. I mean, one or the other.
right.
So
Yeah,
pick a lane.
unfortunately.
I'd rather break really hard. Yeah, I don't really know what to say to them other than when you are faced with breaking really hard and going down into the when you're faced with breaking really hard and admitting that a lot of what you know to be true about yourself is shit and is dangerous versus joining a cult and staying with your ego, I really hope you choose the first option.
Mm-hmm.
I really, really, really hope for your own sake you
I
choose
know.
the option, but most people won't, and that's okay. I
I
mean, it's
know. I
not
think we're.
okay. It's just what happens, you know.
I know. And what. This is the whole cult thing, but I want to. I don't really get into that. But like,
We
it's
don't
like,
have to get
why?
it. We really don't have to get into that.
Yeah.
I just think so many people who do spiritual work, particularly white women, right? Cis women,
Yeah.
especially Americans, okay,
Yeah.
are either getting their asses handed to them, which is good. And I don't mean that in a cancel culture energy
I
way.
know.
I mean that in your life is falling apart. What will you do, Courtney? Okay.
Right. Right.
I'm Chrissy. I'm not talking even shit
I
talking,
know.
you know, but like Courtney and I are on the same team, right? So either they're having that moment or they're saying,
Mhm.
no, I am so right that I will continue this delusion.
Right. And what do you think? It's just fascinating to me because I'm looking at it from a different perspective where, I grew up in a sense where I always tried to be white because I grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood. I was the only brown
Sure.
girl on the street, right? So this breaking that is happening to the white cis women that we're talking about, um, just give me a second. I'm just feeling out a question here because I'm feeling like there's something deeper that spirit may want us to like go into in
No,
regards to what do you think that resistance really is? Like you had your experience and your opening and whatnot, and I really truly believe, Chrissy, that you're here to help, people in your other white people or in white women to move
I agree.
into, right,
I agree.
more of an elevated state of femininity or their divine feminine or their energy or their soul or their whatever you want to call it and their essence. So let's go into that because I think we're gonna take a break before we like go deeper into it. But let's give them a little bit about what is it that you think that holds these white women back and the fear from actually looking at
Yeah.
the system and their awakening process. What are they resisting in opening up to something more?
Well, let me say that I am also resisting it.
Are you?
In more complex ways.
Okay. Okay.
Right?
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
on, I'm on level 10 of resisting it, and a lot of them are on
Okay.
level 2 to 4, you know.
Okay. Okay. So
But
there's
it
different levels. I didn't
ultimately,
think of it that way. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
just like any amount of healing, like there's different levels. But I think it is to truly look at and not be loyal to our own whiteness, because whiteness is not about genetic lineage. Whiteness is a concept that was created to harm us and harm other people for the benefit of the
Right.
other. Okay. So to
Mhm.
truly look at and not believe that our whiteness is our identity requires us to sacrifice power and control.
Mm.
So
And where do white women, and being a woman too, where do they have power and control really? What is that? Do they have power and
the
control?
men who they are allegiant to, typically.
Interesting.
Men who they are allergic to, and whatever lies we have been conditioned to tell ourselves about how the world's pain is not ours.
Okay. I never attached it to a man before.
It's not entirely attached to a man, but there are ways
Right.
that it can be, certainly.
But they can be. Yeah. Probably like in work ethic, moving up the social ladder scale, things like that as
Standing up
well.
to your husband, standing up, if you have one, standing up to your dad, standing up to your grandfather.
Right.
That's
Right.
where my work is right now.
Right. And where are the troubles that you're facing with that? Are you hitting any
Money,
brick walls
money,
with that?
money,
Wow. Yeah.
money. Yeah, totally.
Like they don't want to pay, or is it not
No,
an
no, 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 no.
open?
Like they'll give me money. But it's so often for white women, and particularly white women like me, who have some amount, mine isn't a crazy amount, but some amount of inherited wealth,
Right.
right? It's like, how do you this is just for me personally. I'm not saying this is true for all white women, but like, you know, it has to do with like, okay, where are the ways in which in some ways I'm not, I think you know what I mean, as a person who has experienced a significant amount of trauma at the hands of the people in the lineage, right? Where is some of this kind of owed to me? You know what I mean? Because like this just sort of makes sense energetically, and where am I forfeiting my own values to receive it? And then, okay, let's say that you do receive the money in some capacity. How do you deal with that? What does that teach you about yourself? So that's why
it's just fascinating that it's so wrapped up around money, right? We're on the other with white women.
Yeah, it's all about
what you're talking about. Whereas in respect to BIPOC, it is about our worthiness to do anything in this world.
Sure. Oh, for sure.
So it's not about money. Ours is a survival. So I'm just finding the link there of how they interact together. It's quite fascinating. It's fascinating to me right now. Just kind of putting that together.
Well, I might be only looking at it from my personal perspective, or I might just be framing it incorrectly, right? But it's just,
I think it's
the earlier I think if we're looking at allegiance to whiteness and white women and how this connects to spirituality, probably the very earliest, like level 0, 1, and 2, okay, are like, hey, you're a white person. That means your lineage has done shit things.
Right.
That's like, those are the big things.
Right. I think that's where we're basically starting to wake up to, of the mass consciousness, right? We're starting there. Yeah. Yeah.
And then levels 8, 9, 10 are more like, okay, if you have to participate in the system, and if this person is your grandfather, father, what you're expressing yourself, how do you either stay or not stay in relationship to that, while admitting that part of the reason you stay in relationship to it, whether you want to admit to it or not, is because of your ability to have security. How much security is, quote, owed to you? What is security? What is safety? Why does it exist for me, but not for Black women? Why do we so often tell the story that is somehow spiritual? I'm spiritually entitled to that by God, through God.
Wow. I never thought of it that way. It's all about the structure and the foundation, and
So this is why there's. Oh, I'm sorry. Keep going.
Yeah, no, it's all good, and it's just it's similar because it's still from a lack mindset, which is where I think we come to the middle ground between BIPOC and white, and being spiritualist and finding God, is to recognize that we're all coming from that lack mindset, just from different perspectives. Because
and we've been told to approach that in different ways based on the identity that our race or born sex assigns to us. So mine, having been raised middle to upper class as a white girl who went to Catholic school and prep school and was trained to be praying, and this is this, and where's your husband? Is your husband a doctor?
Yeah, well, see, I was raised like that too, but I was like, so it's really fascinating because I was middle upper class as well, but but brown, but very fair skin growing up. And so people of my own culture, I just dated someone from my own culture who would make fun of me because I speak like a valley girl. He's like, you talk like a white girl. And I'm like, well, because that's how I grew up with.
I'm going to talk like the people I'm raised around, or
yeah, exactly. But it's fascinating because there's like this I don't know, everything you're saying is just really fascinating to me, because it also helps me to alleviate a lot of things that I had to work through, and to see that other women also who are white are actually going through very similar things, just on the opposite scale, that we're trying to all just evolve into something.
And probably slower than you, and probably slower than other women of color.
I don't know.
We're going through it on the opposite spectrum, but very fucking slowly.
Yeah. But there's definitely so let's take a quick break. We're gonna come back and we're gonna talk about Chrissy. We're gonna get more into about what you're doing, what you're moving in your business, how you're changing the collective, what your mission is, things like that. So we're gonna be right back. We're gonna take a quick break, and we'll see you guys soon. Just hang tight.
Hey guys, I'm gonna really just give you the lowdown about Chrissy. And there aren't many intuitives that I go to or people that I trust. And I'm not asking you to trust even my opinion. I want you to just really follow your gut instinct, especially if you are pulled to the work that I'm putting out there in the world. There are a lot of mystical things that we don't quite understand in our world, things that have been suppressed from us, taken from us. We have been suppressed in our intuitive knowing, our mysticism, our pineal gland. We have been imprisoned in certain societal beliefs. What I have found with Chrissy is that mystical piece. I can speak to her and feel safe about ancestral trauma and what we go through in order to see these otherworldly things. So I just wanted to put that out there, that if you are pulled to Chrissy, check her out. She's funny. I mean, we banter back and forth. She's got a great sense of humor. She's creative. She's funny. She's one of the rarest, most beautiful souls that I know, and I just really want to lift her up in this. So please take a look at her. Check her out. And yes, I got to toot my own horn. You guys know that I have experienced life in a completely reversed way from my abilities and how I know spirit. So yeah, if you want to work with me, I do have services available. Check it out. Go to my website. Don't forget to like and subscribe, guys. Follow everyone that I put on this show, and myself included. And let's get back to the show. Thanks for listening.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Great Break podcast, the podcast you don't want to hear. I'm here with Chrissy Tolley. I'm Rena Wells, your host, and we are going to continue our conversation about how Chrissy had her big awakening as a magical realist and a professional psychic intuitive. And we're going to get more into about the work now that she's doing, what she sees, solutions, how she's moving her work forward and waking up humanity and the collective. So tell us a little bit more about your work, Chrissy. What is it that, I guess, the heart of your work, what drives you in the work that you're doing, and your vision for it?
Sure. Well, I think part of the reason Rena and you and I like each other a lot, and just sort of naturally vibe, is because I don't want to define your work for you, but I think something you and I share and talk so much about is spiritual, what I refer to as spiritual inheritance, which is energetic lineage inheritance that you get from your DNA. I focus on that in my work. To my quote business model is just one-on-one readings. There's a 45-minute option, which my time boundary sucks. It's probably an hour, and 75-minute option. Time boundary sucks. Yeah. An hour and a half. So those are the two options. If you go to my website, those are the only two things you can buy. Okay.
Right.
And Rena was sort of mentioning there's a new edition, an add-on to my work.
Yeah.
That's the core of it, and that will probably stay the core of it. And Rena and I both, I think, spend a lot of time focusing on what spiritual inheritance is, which I've just defined it as lessons that your family has passed on to you and your siblings and your cousins and people you are genetically related to, that you are going to, for whatever reason, sort through in this lifetime. So that's what I spend a majority of my time talking about. Now, I'm happy to talk about, somebody's girlfriend and why they broke up 3 years ago. I'm happy to talk about, this new work project that they've got going on and the supervisor's bananas. I talk tiny details, and I love talking tiny details, but the foundation of all of those tiny details that Spirit's giving me is still informed through the spiritual inheritance they came into this lifetime. So it's very common when I start a reading for me to say, okay, we need to talk about your mom's mom. It's just like, let's start with her, right? And then suddenly, within 3 minutes, we're talking about the power dynamics of that woman and what she had and what she experienced, why the mom's like that, why they raised the client and the client's sister like that, and why that we now have this supervisor who's bananas. Right. So that's what I spend so much of my time talking about. The way I would say my work is evolving, Rena knows this because she and I have had multiple professional and personal discussions about it recently, has to do with spiritual influence or possession, and particularly demonic possession. That is more and more of my clients are coming to me with and dealing with, both because I think we're just seeing that on the earth plane a lot more. Suddenly.
Yeah. Why do you think that is? Why do you think? Because I'd love to hear your viewpoint on why you think that is. Because I don't get to talk to many people about that at all. And I don't think even our listeners, they might be curious of, and they may be experiencing things. So I think more people are experiencing these dark things a lot, right?
All of us. And if you are experiencing something like that, it's not a moral failure. It's just what is happening.
Right.
Why is it happening? I don't know. Certainly the spiritual warfare element that's going on is very potent. I don't love that language, not because I think it's wrong, but because it's really been weaponized by the far right in America and globally. That energy and that language has been weaponized. But I don't think it's incorrect. I just think a lot of the people who are fighting on the quote right side of that spiritual war are not.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah. And no, that's very true.
Yeah, and I would say especially Rena in the past 4-ish months. My God.
I can't tell you. Like they're starting to like, I'll just be outside sitting one evening. I was just sitting outside, minding my own business. It was late, I was doing a little, just sitting. And this person, and all I saw at the corner of my eye was a shadow. Like it wasn't even a human. And then it came by the fence, and then the man came right up to the fence, and he's like, "Hi." And it was not a man, like it was. And so these things are, I've noticed it too, picking up a lot. And my theory for it is that the veil is becoming very thin and people are waking up more, right?
I actually don't really have a grounded theory for it. I just am observing it and I'm like, oh no. And so on my social media more and more, I'm communicating to just kind of whoever who will listen. Please start praying.
Right.
Start communicating or being engaged with either again or the first time the spiritual, whatever your spiritual lineage is or whatever your spiritual alignment is. Please wake up.
Right.
Get going.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, sorry. I was going to ask them, do you think spirit is, this is coming to you a lot more because spirit is prepping your work to change in that way? Or do you have any insight on that? Or
I keep trying to avoid the question. Rena keeps circling back.
I wasn't sure if I should ask.
No. It's just, I think the reason I'm avoiding it is because I don't know the answer. And I'm worried I'm not ready for what I have been prepped for, even though that's probably not true. Yeah, I am at my core, I'm supposed to, and I was always meant to over time be able to do for other people what Don Pedro Gonzalez once did for me.
Right. That's beautiful.
And I knew that from the beginning. What's really funny is I thought I was arrogant bitch. I thought I was ready, 2 years into my work. Hilarious. Now I'm 5 years in, a little over 5 years in, and I'm like, she's not ready. What are we doing?
Isn't that the case? That's always the case.
Like, no, I'm not.
Same. I thought I was like meant to be an ayahuasca shaman, and that got ripped out of my butt. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'm not ready. I'm like, oh no, I'm not ready. Now I'm like, I don't know if I'm
no, but the people who actually are ready are like, not this. And the people who are like, I'm ready for the work are like children spiritually. Right. And they're about to get their asses handed to them or possessed and then possess more people. So that's very fun. But yeah, I have to go do that, but I don't know what that looks like. I don't know. To me, and this is going back to my, level 10 security money right. Bullshit. I'm like, well, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to do that. I just don't know how to do that. How am I going to have my credit score?
Right.
How am I going
to so then what are you focusing on to maybe that leads to that, or what have you been guided on now?
This is where things get absolutely hilarious, where I'm focusing on that, and the way that I'm trying to make my work more accessible to more people, especially cost-wise, is through creating this brand that I'm calling Reality TV Psychic. And that's what Rena was referring to. So I've been a longtime fan of The Bachelor for years, and it's actually,
I love The Bachelor too. So
and Canada Bachelor is its own kind of world, but is also excellent. US Bachelor is like way more tacky and terrible, but is considered like the ultimate.
Oh, that's the one I was talking about. It's not the US one you're watching?
Yeah, I watch US. Do you watch Canada?
US.
Okay, but there is Canada, right?
Oh, is there? I don't know. I watched the US one.
There used to be Canada. Fuck.
Oh.
She's gonna say that she's a bachelor.
I don't like anything about Canada.
Okay. So yes, we're referring to the US one, and there's now many Canadians on the US one. Many Canadians have been very successful on the and even people from Toronto have been super successful on.
Well, I haven't watched it in the last 3 years, so.
Okay. Well, there's way more Canadian people. Okay, anyway. So I have watched this since about 2013, 2014. Very early, even before I realized how intuitive I was watching it from an intuitive lens. So I would sort of say, oh, here's so-and-so on screen. Oh God, this is going to be a nightmare. No, not him. Bad news. Right, of course. And just energetically reading him, I would be correct. And so I've done this for years. I did it with my cousin Allie. She's also a very gifted intuitive. I've loved it. And so eventually I started doing it online in a way that people could see. Back in October of last year, which was the very beginning of Michelle's season of The Bachelorette, I started filming the TV screen through my Instagram stories. And then I just added captions next to the TV screen with my intuitive reads of the contestants who were getting out of the Michelle. And people really loved it. Well, that's not true. Maybe 100 people really loved it. And the remaining 3,000 followers of mine are like, this is annoying, and either unfollowed me or muted me, which I respect. But that eventually, I did it for Clayton's season. And then for this season, my friend Bevan helped me start a Patreon. And now people are paying me $7 to watch me do this incredibly goofy thing. And so I'm really excited, and it's going really well.
I think it's amazing because you know what you're talking about earlier about what your foundation is, but Spirit gives you all these little details, but the core of everything that you do is the basis of what Don did for you, Don Pedro did for you. But you've got all these little tidbits that come on top. And so I love what you're doing, because it helps those to open up to the energy that you're bringing in,
people would ask me in the past, oh, you should teach classes, you should teach courses, do you do mentorship? And even though I am a teacher and have been trained as a teacher, and I think I'm a good one, I was always like, I don't know how to do this in a way that doesn't feel recycled or old or annoying. Because the majority of what I see, especially taught by people who are pretty new to the work, is just boring, not useful, maybe useful to people who are barely in it, which is totally fine. I think if God called me to make some sort of curriculum, awesome, do it. But I mean, I just am not impressed, and I don't care, and I'm kind of a snob. If everybody's already done it, I'm not gonna do it.
I don't consider you stop. I just consider you to be just, I'm gonna be honest, and I don't want to take offense, but quirky, funny, and just really innovative, and I think that's what captures people truly,
And so I can just sort of sense, and some of it is I think I have good business sense. I was raised by a lot of business owners and teachers, so it's like, I was like, okay, well, I don't want to put effort into creating something I'm not proud of. So when this idea hit me around combining, intuitively reading people on what is essentially a public forum, such as reality television, right? I don't think it's appropriate to do that in an environment where people hadn't agreed to be witnessed, right? So when I combined these things, it was like, oh, this is a way that is actually fun to teach it. This is a way I actually get fun about. And this is essentially structuring its own curriculum without me having to sit down and write for hours about stuff that I think other people have written about better.
Right. And I love what you're doing too, because it also shows people who are having an awakening that, because we've been so conditioned to believe that our work has to be like when you were a teacher, the stagnant, structured. I was the same in government, like it has to be this way. And me trying to be creative and funny, creating IT projects, like that's just not something that so it's funny that what you're doing is helping to pull those people, because we want to grab those people in the matrix that are just not entirely they're open, but they're and I feel like with this, what you're doing is definitely gonna help people in a lighter way, because that's the whole thing I struggle with in the spiritual community too. It's so heavy, and this is another reason why I created this podcast, was to help your experience and different people's perspectives to show people that you can move into your soul's mission in a way that can be fun, creative, and not so constrictive of what you've been living before in the past.
Right. And you're gonna have to go through that break, like for sure.
Well,
If not, as we all have, but the end result of going through that incredibly hard spiritual labor is not supposed to be more sorrow, more sadness, more trauma, more ego bullshit. It's supposed to be more lightness, more ability to identify joy, more freedom to go, ideally, hopefully, find what's true for you. And this goofy ass thing is true for me, and I'm really proud of it.
I'm really proud of you. I think it's courageous and great. A lot of people would be scared to do something out of the norm, Chrissy. And
I was yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's really great. So all right, so do you see any obstacles in your way right now? What challenges are you facing, do you think, in regards to leveling up your business or moving?
Well, one of the things, and this will circle back to what I was talking about in regards to like whiteness, how it informs me, how whiteness is for all of us, but particularly people who are born of European descent and live in America, have been taught the, what's the best word? I'm trying to come up with the word.
Fragility?
No, like it's like white allegiance to whiteness, which is so often allegiance to America, is something that is propaganda that's taught to us from when we're very young.
Okay.
And so breaking away from that, even so, how do you then deal with family members who are still in that, or at least in that to an extent, blah blah blah. Okay, which I think that is, people attempt to simplify that often on the internet. They're like, well, just get in a fight with your family, right? Like, cut them off.
Right.
Or you cut them off, get in a fight at Thanksgiving dinner is sort of, which is true. I mean, there's elements of that are necessary. I've done parts of that, right? Yeah. Or it's like, say nothing. I lean more to saying nothing, right? Yeah. That's where I have to catch myself, because I was raised in, at least bits of it were highly fucking traumatizing. So my go-to is fawn, fake, people please, smooth over. Right. Fawn, fake, people please, smooth over. Fake, people please, smooth over. It's what I've been taught to do since I was very, very small. So to work against that, even for something as necessary and important as race, the fall of my country, it's like still really hard. But yeah, where I'm struggling to level up has more to do with seeing myself as, I know this sounds counterintuitive, I hope I don't sound silly, worthy of abundance, because I still am in this space, especially I'm literally a diagnosed workaholic who has had to heal elements of that. I still see myself as not wanting to have the kind of financial ease that would keep me from being able to relate to people I care about. And at the same time, if I'm going to be witnessed by a lot of people, I can't be worried about paying all of my bills. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, that makes complete sense. And that whole aspect too, that you're still working in that resistance piece too, I can understand that with your business and all of that, and that creative space kind of alleviates some of that resistance with what you're dealing with in regards to, does it not?
Yeah, I mean, in the sense of if you want to do, God, this is so hard. It's hard for me to say this well in a way that's truly grounded. I just might get it wrong. If you want to be able to do excellent work in the world, ideally you will be put in a space where you have to be less conscious of having your own needs met. I feel that. I feel it's like, whether those needs are met through capital that's gained, or whether those needs are met through the strength of the community you're building. I don't know. Like, ideally, that has to be what's going on. And there's still this piece of me, because in spite of the fact that I was raised upper middle class, it was very new money upper middle class, very fake. But what's coming up in me is the fact that I don't have anybody in my lineage other than one specific aunt who's been highly demonized for it, of women who earn their own money.
Wow. And this is the thing, is like
one fucking aunt who earned her own money, and they talk so much shit about her in my family.
Wow.
Okay,
But see, you're being the example there, Chrissy. So like all of this that you're doing and all of those challenges, and you're saying, you don't want to do the Thanksgiving fighting and the bringing that up and saying,
I've already done some of it. It's just like I'm kind of the one, particularly my father's side of the family. I'm the one thing that's holding the family together. If I stop playing along, the family will disintegrate.
Yeah, I understand that
I'm
too.
sort of just like, is it worth it? Is it necessary?
Exactly.
Do you know, which it might be. I truly don't know. And because my country is headed for a civil war, objectively, I'm sort of just like, should I do it now or should we do it 4 years from now? I don't know. Like in some ways there's a lot of grief there for me.
Yeah. Yeah, there is.
And I'm not trying to make excuses for my behavior or what might be cowardice. It's just, there's grief.
No.
There is. There's grief.
There is. And I believe though, Chrissy, like how you've been led and the work that you're doing. And this is why I honor so much of what you're doing and being that example and the way that you are, how you do things very professionally, I have to say. That you do things very professionally. And just hearing about all your struggles and everything that you went through to get to this point, and I know whoever hears this and identifies with even like as you are a cis white woman, right? Being able to see that I can heal, I can be an example, I can move out of old ways of thinking. I don't have to be trapped by my ancestry line.
Yeah.
All of those things and everything that you're doing. And yeah, it is progress, of course. I think all of us are going through all of these different things right now as a collective, and people of color, I see that too. I think what irritates me is the whole victim. Like, I'm like, why can't my people get out of this victim place? Like, let's get out of this victim place, right? It's very difficult, and rightfully so. There's two extremes there, but I love that we can come together and have these kinds of conversations because we're doing somewhat similar work but in different ways, and I love exactly the example that you're doing, bringing humor and fun and all of those things into it, showing that there is a mystical world. You can break out of like these family ties that you have, and you can still come into camaraderie with other people who are also healing like victim mindset and things of the past of where our ancestors couldn't quite mesh, but these ancestors, us, can do it.
Yeah. So it's just, what am I even trying to say? I am still, for me to sit here, which I wouldn't do, but here's why I wouldn't do it. For me to sit here and say, well, all these white women aren't doing the work. Go. Like, then I'm also starting to see a lot of people saying that, right? It's just so silly.
Yeah.
If you are, whiteness, if you were raised white, and I'm sure, like you said, in some ways not, whiteness and white supremacy is the water we're swimming in. To pretend that you're going to get past it in this lifetime is hilarious.
Like, that is actually really fun. I mean, you got to really put your head in the ground.
Like you're going to be able to truly distance yourself from it and be like, I healed this, is, at least if you're white, insane. An inane thing to say. So it's more just like, where are you in it? Okay, I'm here.
Right. Exactly.
I'm going to try my best to be here. If you're over, if I'm on level 10, theoretically, okay, I need to try to handle level 10 as best I can with the accountability and awareness that I can. If you're on level 2 to 4, you don't need to be on level 10. You need to be doing 2 to 4 as best you can.
Right. I love that.
But that's, yeah. So I'm on level 10. I don't even think I'm necessarily acing it. I'm in this weird little window where I don't know.
I love your weird little window. But we're coming to the end of our podcast here. So yeah, I love this conversation. I swear I could probably talk to you forever about just everything. Like, honestly, the energy, everything, everywhere that you've come from. I'm so happy to hear about not happy, but I'm glad that I heard about your path and where you came from, because I knew there was something deep there. I knew there was something, but I didn't know the whole story. And I was like, yeah, it's quite fascinating. And I love that this is getting out in the world and you're being vulnerable and sharing your story. I really appreciate that. Is there anything that you would like to close out with anybody that is listening in regards to the work that you're doing or what's going on in the world? Any closing statements?
Sure. Um, okay, so this is just, I guess, for the other white women who are listening. Really deep, significant pain is the cost of being white. And so the question is, or having chosen whiteness in this lifetime. Okay. You came into, I believe we came into this for a reason, whatever. So the question is, are you going to take that pain the way you've been trained to and fling it at other people? Or are you going to take that pain and turn it in toward yourself, which is so much of what depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation is? Or can you kind of find that middle ground of saying, I'm not going to harm myself and I'm going to try my best not to harm other people. And instead I will sit with this pain and allow it to lead where it wants to go so that I can alchemize it and try my best, however long it takes, to heal myself and my family lineage.
Right.
That's what the work is. And the reason I'm talking about like cults and, you know, very, I don't know, spiritual bypassy shit is simply because there's so many courses and groups and retreats available to you.
Yes.
To buy into, to say, hey, you know, actually, we have this really simple formula. You don't have to go do this pain. Okay. So I'd say that's one thing. And number two, this is for everybody, this is just true. If your family line has some big thing that needs to be healed, you are going to deal with it in this lifetime. And you're dealing, whether that's addiction, sorrow, sexual abuse, secrecy, I don't know. Whatever
it is. Money issues, whatever
I don't know. If it's in your line and it hasn't been dealt with, then those lessons and gifts will be parsed out amongst the ancestry that exists now. You're dealing with that or having to deal with that is not a personal failure or even a moral failure. Even if the way you're dealing with it or going about trying to heal and solve it isn't, you don't think you're doing your best, fine. Okay, maybe that's moral. But the fact that you're experiencing it is not a personal failure. It's just in the family line. It has to happen.
Right. Right. Thank you.
Those are my closing statements.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's powerful. It's so powerful because that is exactly what you're saying, where the work has to happen at this time for us to come together in humanity. So we don't have civil wars, like whatever's happening down. I mean, North America is going through massive shifts, man. And I thank you, Chrissy, for the work that you're doing. I thank you for being on the podcast. I thank you for being a friend. I love you. This is amazing. You guys, please check Chrissy out. Check out, if you're into The Bachelor, like I'm really considering joining
if you're into The Bachelor, come hang. Please, desperately come hang.
Yes, definitely. Come hang out. Yeah, and I'm sure I'll probably have Chrissy again if you'll join me again. We'll talk more one day on this podcast. And
I love that.
Yeah, it'll be great. All right, guys. Thanks everybody for joining us on the Great Break podcast. You'll find Chrissy's information. I will tag everything down below. And in this video, you can find her social media contact information there and mine as well. This is the Great Break podcast, the podcast you don't want to hear. Take care, guys, and we'll see you soon. Bye.